Доброго дня, колеги.
Hello, dear colleagues. A traditional briefing on the course of reforms in Ukraine. And this week is a plenary week at the Parliament of Ukraine, and the Parliament will consider a series of very important draft laws that can be adopted in the second reading that are linked to the number of reforms, in particular in the financial sphere, of course, the local self-government and decentralization, and the issues of deregulation. The agenda of the sessions will be known after the agreeing council sits. One of the draft laws was tabled even during the last plenary session week. It is about the fund of guaranteeing deposits, which is important according to a number of issues. First of all, it has to put the Ukrainian banking system to order, as it is going through a very difficult period of purification, and the role of this fund becomes ever more important from the point of view of the protection of rights of account holders, and also because of the rights of and because of the work with international financial institutions. There's an agreement on the support of the fund on the part of the World Bank and other financial institutions, so Ukraine has an opportunity to swiftly solve the issues that there are in the banking system and to transform this body into a very important one in the banking system. So I invite here Mr. Andrei Olenchik, who is the Deputy Director of the fund, to explain the essence and the significance of this draft law. Your word. Good afternoon. Really, as Taras said, this draft law had to be voted for on the 2nd of July. However, because of a number of other important draft laws on the agenda, it didn't see the discussion, including other laws, draft laws that are linked to the World Bank. The price of the issue, the cost of the issue is rather high for the country, as the Minister of Finance, Natalia Reska, said. This is a rather complicated draft law with a lot of novels. It has to provide for more efficiency on the system of guaranteeing deposits and accounts. Well, this is small wonder, because at the moment 55 banks are taking part in the portfolio of this fund. 11 of them are on the stage of being liquidated, and there are hundreds of thousands of account holders there, dozens of thousands of other creditors, including budget institutions and real enterprises. And the assets that those banks had when they were declared not able to pay is over 220 billion hryvnia. So this is a rather important law, including the social sphere, because most of the account holders including those that are under our administration, those are so-called lesser provided people. And according to the statistics that we have, it is the limit for compensation is 200,000 hryvnia, so more than 80,000 of those accounts are within this limit. But on the average, we're talking about 15,000 hryvnia, and we're talking about many, many millions of account holders whose fate depends on whose situation depends on how our system of guaranteeing the accounts is working. 53 of those banks were given to us, transferred to us in 2014. We haven't seen anything like this before, although we've been in existence for 15 years now, and there's a number of very important issues that could not be even thought of before all this happened, and they should be actually removed to work successfully further. And this is the aim of this 45A draft law. We invited the experts from the International Monetary Fund and from the American Ministry of Finance, and this is, I'd say, the essence of the international experience and the practice that we saw during those 2 years. Probably it's not possible to dwell on all the details, so I'll comment on just several key issues that I think are significant not just for the narrow circle of professionals, but for many, many people in this country as well. First, according to this draft law, the so-called system of consolidated office on the work with assets has to be introduced. According to today's version of the law on the guaranteeing deposits, you only have the right to work. Some authorized persons have to work with your deposits who, on behalf of the fund, manage certain banks.
It would be easier if we had something personal. Now we have a 54 and efficiently and transparent little way to govern about more than 320 billion. It's impossible, unrealistic. That's why, like in the US, we introduce so-called office, which with all these functions in one mega department of the fund, and then people who manage the banks, they will have additional functions. That's a very important step and a timely step, because the majority of banks in our portfolio, they in summer and autumn, beginning the next year, we will start to realize assets. Why is it important for people? Easy, because how efficiently we can organize assets that will influence whether there is a chance to get money from banks, creditors of the fourth line and seventh line. And creditors of the fourth line, those are deposits higher than 200,000 hryvnia. Less than 2%, but that's a lot. That's thousands of people. It's important from the point of view of building renovation or trust to banking system and all the rest of the business structures. And that's about social structure, public authorities, and budget, money from local budgets, and in those banks, and many enterprises, all the real sector economy. And there will be enough money, there will be enough liquidation mass, and we can officially realize those assets we have on the balance of those banks, and then quite a realistic chance of those enterprise organizations to get their money back. The second novelty we would like to draw attention to, that's about the work of so-called linked people to banks, and it's about shareholders and other people who had a direct influence on banks before those banks were recognized insolvent and given to us to take them out of the market. Since March, the so-called presidential law, which made and gave an important word to introduce real tools of bringing into property responsibility, owners of banks and other top managers. But in that law, they have some additional very important things which will ease our life, or our fund, the procedure, and the whole process of charging these people linked to banks. There is such a thing that not only the fund can claim against, take them to the courts, but also creditors. So citizens, enterprises, organizations, after we finish liquidation, and the owners, it will be, it's too easy to be happy if we don't get money, because according to the draft law, there is such a right of liquidation when the fund finishes its work with that bank to charge these banks, and there is no limitation of time. That's a part of the best international practice, and these amendments will change the balance of power. So if I can say so, in relations between the fund and creditors of the bank, but on the other hand, owners and top management. The third novelty, important novelty, that is about tools, mechanism of payments. That is, since January 1st, the process of payments will be quicker, and will become payments not later than the 23rd working day, and on the stage of liquidation, and not later than the third day. But on the 1st of July 2016, we make the next evolutionary step, and we review the system of payments. And since the beginning of the temporary administration, when the bank is under our management, we will, the fund, we don't have it now, the fund starts will payments to all the depositors. And whether they agreed or not, like it is according to the law. And there will be a revolutionary, absolutely new technical solutions, according to which such a notion like agent banks, like selected banks, and not always enough of them, they are not efficient, and there are a lot of complaints. That notion will be taken away, because all working banks, according to the new system, which should start working since April, because they will have a chance to become automatically banks, agents, through special use of the system of terminals. And the fourth novelty, we hope, will have big importance, and first of all for physical entities, and that is the sums of on the accounts, and after since 2017 will be guaranteed, and there's Article 26 in the law with a list of exceptions which deposits are not guaranteed. Unfortunately, it's physical money of physical entities are not insured, and there will be this balance or injustice will be taken out, and it meets international standards in for efficient systems of ensuring deposits. And the other point is that since January 1st, 2016, we changed seriously all procedures we use on the stage of temporal administrations and liquidation of banks. And the term temporal administration is reduced seriously. If now it can be 120 days according to the draft law. It's maximum 60 calendar days. How to achieve that reduction? Because we introduce a new tools of qualification of investors, and which we don't have now. So-called pre-qualification investors, which means that the national bank will qualify investors, and they will develop a special list of investors on the regular basis. And then, when the fund receives the bank, we don't make selection of investors. So we work with that list, which is built by National Bank, and it will be updated all the time. There are some other tools which help to reduce the temporal administration, and that's in the list of creditors, and that's on the stage when the bank is problematic. The fund, together with curators of NBU, the fund will get a chance to delegate the quasi-curators, and who will work together with curators of NBU, and because of that, full access to information will have a chance not later than, as I told you, on the to do payments, working with the basis. On the other hand, they will be able to prepare in time to how we'll work with investors, and because there will be a mechanism of pre-qualification, it's quite possible that online we will see why if the bank is in trouble, what happens to assets, and with exactitude I will prognose what can be done when we are not able to save the bank, and if it is given to us as not solvent. It's impossible to mention everything, because I have limited time. I thought it would be possible to draw attention to these parts of the draft. This is a revolutionary draft law, and it allows to get to new horizons in the system of securing assets and the national system. It's not only one fund, and there is an operator to ensure, and there will be two main players, the National Bank and the Ministry of Finances. And the law has also a regulation which allows to optimize our cooperation in this triangle in principle. That's what I wanted to tell you. One more question. That the fund under such conditions, when practically you have to answer to challenges, and we have a big number of that this fund can answer to expectations we have in the system, and of course, and the law and the new mandate, the law is we got it in September, and it changed the other law, but they took into consideration many important things and progressive things, and on many things, and I can tell you, we were in advance even of European directives from 2014, and which regulate the activity of national systems of insurance banks. That was quite a progressive law. Nevertheless, though we wanted to use to have the best European practice, it's one thing. But at that time it was impossible to know everything, and so we're not able to predict all the things in our country, and that at present in the portfolio we would have 55 banks, and nobody could anticipate that the quality is changing, so we need to do the next steps for the fund to be able to respond adequately to these changes, and we thought it would be supported by financial institutions, and that would help us. Absolutely true. The draft law. That's a condition for Ukraine to get one more tranche. And I would like to underline that it's not decisive. It should not be decisive in our country whether we pass the law or not, whether we reform something or not. Ukraine needs money, and we need urgently that money. That's why we will have reforms. And after revolution of dignity, we have a potential in everywhere for us to have reforms despite such external stimulators. But there is a fact, the money. The country needs money, and that's a key to get such assistance, and which will help us with our budget. But in general, the draft law is not something. Through this, we will have a number of activities, and from the program, which was approved by the National Council of Reforms, and so it's not something out of the context. And I would say this is one of the elements of general mosaics of reforms in the financial sector we have in Ukraine. Colleagues, any question? I have one question. This draft law, is it supported by the Financial Commission and with the negotiations with the deputies? Because as far as I understand, this is, and it allows to claim and to probably not all owners of banks and support that. Don't you exclude that anomaly can be corrected? Do you have a B plan in that for that case? Thank you for your question. I hope that in this spot, at this moment, we'll not need any B plan, because during the process of preparation of this draft law in the first reading, and also when it was considered in the committee, prepared for the second reading, there were no questions, and we are sure that it will not have them. There were some other problems which we'll have to consider probably and probably deputies will make a decision. I take that into consideration. There are 4 positions, and probably World Bank and IMF, Ministry of Finances will demand that and will support. But among those 4 positions, they will have a vote. They will not result during the work in the committees. When it was discussed in the committee, responsibility. Thank you. Thank you.
Колеги, хочу ще раз наголосити, що це якраз таки приклад законопроекту, який є частиною великої програми реформ Національної ради реформ і програми розвитку фінансового сектору, що пан Андрій говорив, прикладом в
this is an example of draft law where there is a cooperation with international financial institutions, and if this is voted for, it will allow to solve issues related to building a healthy financial system. That's a good example that the parliament is working on the government, work not only on situational issues, but also they work on strategic issues related to reformation of Ukrainian economy. And in this case, it's a financial sector. Thank you very much for your attention. We'll 2045, we hope it will be also approved in the second reading, approved by the President. Thank you. And